Robinson Crusoe, Chapter 20. Another visit of the savages. Robinson sees them dancing. He perceives the wreck of a vessel. It was now the month of December, as I said above, in my 23rd year. And this, being the southern solstice, for winter I cannot call it, was the particular time of my harvest, and required my being pretty much abroad in the fields. When going out pretty early in the morning, even before it was thorough daylight, I was surprised with seeing a light of some fire upon the shore, at a distance from me of about 2 miles, towards the end of the island, where I had observed some savages had been as before, but not on the other side. But to my great affliction, it was on my side of the island. I was indeed terribly surprised at the sight, and stopped short within my grove, not daring to go out lest I might be surprised. And yet I had no more peace within, from the apprehensions I had that of these savages, in rambling over the island, should find my corn standing or cut, or any of my works and improvements. They would immediately conclude that there were people in the place, and would then never give over till they had found me out. In this extremity, I went back directly to my castle, pulled up the ladder after me, and made all things without look as wild and natural as I could. Then I prepared myself within, putting myself in a posture of defense. I loaded all my cannon, as I called them, that is to say, my muskets, which were mounted upon my new fortification, and all my pistols, and resolved to defend myself to the last gasp, not forgetting seriously to commend myself to the divine protection, and earnestly to pray to God to deliver me out of the hands of the barbarians. And in this posture I continued about 2 hours, but began to be mighty impatient for intelligence abroad, for I had no spies to send out. After sitting a while longer, and musing what I should do in this case, I was not able to bear sitting in ignorance any longer. So, setting up my ladder to the side of the hill where there was a flat place, as I observed before, and then pulling the ladder up after me, I set it up again, and mounted to the top of the hill. And pulling out my perspective glass, which I had taken on purpose, I laid me down flat on my belly on the ground, and began to look for the place. I presently found there was no less than 9 naked savages running around a small fire they had made, not to warm them, for they had no need of that, the weather being extreme hot, but, as I supposed, to dress some of their barbarous diet of human flesh which they had brought with them. Whether alive or dead, I could not know. They had 2 canoes with them, which they had hauled up upon the shore, and as it was then tide of ebb, they seemed to me to wait for the return of the flood to go away again. It is not easy to imagine what confusion this sight put me into, especially seeing them come on my side of the island, and so near me too. But when I observed their coming must be always with the current of the ebb, I began afterward to be more sedate in my mind, being satisfied that I might go abroad with safety all the time of the tide of flood, if they were not on shore before, and having made this observation, I went abroad about my harvest work with the most composure. As I expected, so it proved, for as soon as the tide made it to the westward, I saw them all take boat and row, or paddle as we call it, all away. I should have observed that for an hour and more before they went off, they went to dancing, and I could easily discern their postures and gestures by my glasses. I could not perceive by my nicest observation, but that they were stark naked, and had not the least covering upon them, but whether they were men or women, that I could not distinguish. As soon as I saw them shipped and gone, I took my 2 guns upon my shoulders, and 2 pistols in my girdle, and my great sword by my side, without a scabbard, and with all the speed I was able to make, I went away to the hill where I had discovered the first appearance of all. and as soon as I got thither, which was not less than 2 hours, for I could not go apace, being so laden with arms as I was, I perceived there had been 3 canoes more of savages on that place, and looking out farther, I saw they were all at sea together, making over for the main. This was a dreadful sight to me, especially when going down to the shore, I could see the marks of horror which the dismal work they had been about had left behind it. Viz., the blood, the bones, and part of the flesh of human bodies, eaten and devoured by those wretches with merriment and sport. I was so filled with indignation at the sight that I began now to premeditate the destruction of the next I saw there, let them be who or how many soever. It seemed evident to me that the visits which they thus made to this island were not very frequent, for it was about 15 months before any of them came on shore there again. That is to say, I neither saw them nor any footsteps nor signals of them in all that time. For as to the rainy seasons, then they are sure not to come abroad, at least not so far. Yet all this while I lived uncomfortably, by reason of the constant apprehensions I was in of their coming upon me by surprise. From whence I observed that the expectation of evil is more bitter than the suffering, especially if there is no room to shake off that expectation or those apprehensions. During all this time, I was in a murdering humor, and took up most of my hours, which should have been better employed in contriving how to circumvent and fall upon them the very next time I should see them, especially if they should be divided, as they were the last time, into 2 parties. Nor did I consider at all that if I killed one party, suppose 10 or a dozen, I was still the next day or week or month to kill another, and so another, even ad infinitum, till I should be at length no less a murderer than they were in being man-eaters, and perhaps much more so. I spent my days now in great perplexity and anxiety of mind, expecting that I should, one day or other, fall into the hands of these merciless creatures. And if I did at any time venture abroad, it was not without looking round me with the greatest care and caution imaginable. And now I found, to my great comfort, how happy it was that I provided for a tame flock or herd of goats. For I durst not upon any account fire my gun, especially near that side of the island where they usually came, lest I should alarm the savages. And if they had fled from me now, I was sure to have them come back again, with perhaps 200 or 300 canoes with them in a few days, and then I knew what to expect. However, I wore out a year and 3 months more before I ever saw any more of the savages, and then I found them again, as I soon shall observe. It is true they might have been there once or twice, but either they made no stay, or at least I did not hear them. But in the month of May, as near as I could calculate, and in my 24th year, I had a very strange encounter with them, of which, in its place. The perturbation of my mind during this 15 or 16 months interval was very great. I slept unquiet, dreamed always frightful dreams, and often started out of my sleep in the night. In the day, great troubles overwhelmed my mind, and in the night I dreamed often of killing the savages, and of the reasons why I might justify the doing of it. But to waive all this for a while, it was in the middle of May, on the 16th day, I think, as well as my poor wooden calendar would reckon, for I marked all upon the post still. I say it was the 16th of May, that it blew a very great storm of wind all day, with a great deal of lightning and thunder, and very foul night it was after it. I know not what was the particular occasion of it, but I was reading in the Bible, and had taken up with very serious thoughts about my present condition. I was surprised by a noise of a gun, and I thought, fired at sea. This was to be sure a surprise of a quite different nature from any I had met with before, for the notions this put into my thoughts were quite of another kind. I started up in the greatest haste imaginable, and in a trice clapped my ladder to the middle place of the rock, and pulled it after me. And mounting it the second time, got to the top of the hill the very moment that flash of fire bid me listen for a second gun, which accordingly in about half a minute I heard, and by the sound knew it was from that part of the sea where I was driven down the current in my boat. I immediately considered that this must be some ship in distress, and that they had some comrade or some other ship in company, and fired those guns for signals of distress and to obtain help. I had this presence of mind at that minute as to think that though I could not help them, it may be they might help me. So I brought together all the dry wood I could get at hand, and making a good handsome pile, I set it on fire upon the hill. The wood was dry and blazed freely, and though the wind blew very hard, yet it burnt fairly out, so that I was certain if there was any such thing as a ship, they must needs see it, and no doubt they did. For as soon as ever my fire blazed up, I heard another gun, and after that several others, all from the same quarter. I plied my fire all night long till day broke, and when it was broad day and the air cleared up, I saw something at a great distance at sea, full east of the island, whether a sail or a hull I could not distinguish. No, not with my glasses. The distance was too great, and the weather still something hazy also. At least it was so out at sea. I looked frequently at it all that day, and soon perceived that it did not move. So I presently concluded that it was a ship at an anchor, and being eager, you might be sure, to be satisfied, I took my gun in my hand and ran toward the south side of the island, to the rocks where I'd formerly been carried away with the current. And getting up there, the weather by this time being perfectly clear, I could plainly see, to my great sorrow, the wreck of a ship, cast away in the night upon those concealed rocks which I found when I was out in my boat, and which rocks, as they checked the violence of the stream, and made a kind of counter-stream or eddy, were the occasion of my recovering from the most desperate, hopeless condition that ever I had been in all my life. Thus, what is one man's safety is another man's destruction. For it seems that these men, whoever they were, being out of their knowledge, and the rocks being wholly under water, had been driven upon them in the night, the wind blowing hard at east and east-northeast. Had they seen the island, as I must necessarily suppose they did not, they must, as I thought, have endeavored to have saved themselves on shore by the help of their boat. But their firing of guns for help, especially when they saw, as I imagined, my fire, filled me with many thoughts. First, I imagined that upon seeing my light, they might have put themselves into their boat, and have endeavored to make the shore, but that the sea going very high, they might have been cast away. Other times I imagined that they might have lost their boat before, as might be the case many ways, as particularly by the breaking of the sea upon their ship, which many times obliges men to starve or take on pieces their boat, and sometimes to throw it overboard with their own hands. Other times I imagined they had some other ship or ships in company, who upon the signals of distress they had made, had taken them up and carried them off. Other times I fancied they were all gone off to sea in their boat, and being hurried away by the current that I had been formerly in, were carried out into the great ocean, where there was nothing but misery and perishing, and that perhaps they might by this time think of starving, and of being in a condition to eat one another. As all these were but conjectures at best, so in the condition I was in, I could do no more than look on upon the misery of the poor men and pity them, which had still this good effect on my side, that it gave me more and more cause to give thanks to God, who had so happily and comfortably provided for me in my desolate condition, and that of two ships' companies who were now cast away upon this part of the world, not one life should be spared but mine. I learned here again to observe that it is very rare that the providence of God casts us into any condition of life so low, or any misery so great, that we may see something or other to be thankful for, and may see others in worse circumstances than our own. Such certainly was the case of these men, of whom I could not so much as see room to suppose any of them were saved. Nothing could make it rational so much as to wish or expect that they did not all perish there, except the possibility only of their being taken up by another ship in company. And this was but mere possibility indeed, for I saw not the least sign or appearance of any such thing. I cannot explain by any possible energy of words what a strange longing or hankering of desires I felt in my soul upon this sight, breaking out sometimes thus: "Oh, that there had been but one or two, nay, but one soul saved out of this ship to have escaped me! That I might but have had one companion, one fellow creature to have spoken to me, and to have conversed with! In all the time of my solitary life, I never felt so earnest, so strong a desire after the society of my fellow creatures, or so deep a regret at the want of it." And we'll go on with chapter 21 in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thank you for watching. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.